This is Caffeinate Your Career, a series where I get to ask experts all the questions that you want to know. I'm your host, Alicia Josie, and today I'm talking with Paul Davis. Paul owns Mosi Tea, and he's going to take us through what it was like creating his own product. So glad you could be here with us today, Paul. So
Thanks for
joining us. Yeah. So we're just going to jump right in with the rapid icebreakers, okay?
Okay.
First question for you. Favorite way to spend a day off?
I love to play golf. So golf would definitely be part of that, and then just family time. I've got two boys, married, so a lot of times we'll go, on a hike or just have fun out in the yard or something like that.
So outdoors for sure.
Love the outdoors, yeah.
Nice. And what would be the first thing that you would do if you won the lottery?
I would make sure everything's paid off.
Nice.
And then I would probably plan a cool trip. I think Thailand is on our bucket list of places to go, but we just love to travel too.
Nice.
Yeah.
And the last thing is something that you're excited about right now.
I am excited about TikTok.
Okay.
Yeah, so not just as a user, but from a business perspective too. But I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can relate, but I can just scroll through TikTok for a long time and just realize later, like, man, where did the time go? But I think there are a lot of really cool implications for businesses too, and a lot that we're looking into for ours. But I think it's forcing people to be more thoughtful with short content versus like long form content like YouTube or something like that. And kind of you're seeing like people get famous overnight, it seems, with whether it's recipes or home cleaning or something like that. So I'm pumped about TikTok. I think it's a really cool platform.
Yeah, I love TikTok. I literally can spend 3 hours up there, like you
easily
said, and then I'm like, I thought it was only 1 hour.
Yeah,
it's really cool. I like how people are being like really raw and relatable on there too.
Yeah.
It's not as like, it's different from Instagram. So I like that. So now I want to talk about Mosi Tea. Can you like share the story? Tell everyone what it is.
Yeah. So it's a tea infuser. The TLDR is I basically grew up in Africa and drank a lot of tea. Got to the States and realized, man, there's just not really a great way to take high quality loose leaf tea on the go. So decided to kind of invent my own little product, and that's kind of it. But yeah, so it's basically like with any loose leaf tea, you want to be able to steep it for only a certain amount of time, right? So you've got the little sieve up in here, and it's detachable. So it's nice and squishy too, so you can flip it out, clean it, whatever. But you put the loose leaf tea in there, and then you put it back in, flip it upside down to steep for, if it's black tea, like 4 minutes, herbal tea, 5 minutes. And then we've got some other like little attachments too. This bigger one is for cold brew. So with cold brew, you want to put in double the amount usually, whether it's coffee or tea. You can do that and just leave it in the fridge overnight. This is for coffee on the go, and then this is for matcha. It can also be used to scratch your head too.
Head scratcher. Really cool. So you grew up in Africa, and that really influenced you whenever you were thinking about starting this company.
Yeah, so growing up in Africa, Southern Africa, so I spent 5 years in Johannesburg, South Africa, and then Harare, Zimbabwe for another 5 years. Parents were missionaries, and they did a lot of work with the AIDS pandemic over there. So we would travel from village to village, and a lot of times people would welcome you into the village with tea. So very much a British colony still, and tea is literally part of every day. Actually, our logo is inspired by, if you see, it's a little leaf, and it points to 10 a.m., 12, 2, and then the line goes down to the 6, so in the little O right there. And that's basically just the tea times during the day.
Okay.
So 10, with every meal they'll drink tea as well, right? So yeah, I moved back to the States when I was about 15, and I wasn't drinking a lot of coffee or anything like that. But when I got to college, I found myself just getting tired of drinking crappy Keurig coffee and dashing off to class, right? So I started like buying tea infusers and loose leaf and playing around with them, and I was frustrated with just a lot of them because they didn't solve some of those problems. Like a lot of them, and I actually brought some just to kind of show some of the process, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more, but like this one, for instance, you drink out of the top here, but the siev's at the bottom. So it gets oversteeped, it gets to be bitter tea, and so this one just, a lot of them were like that. But I think just one of the other things that annoyed me was, having to not only use one hand but two and set one thing aside, and it was messy. And loose leaf tea in general, like I think a lot of people don't see it as something easy to make because you have to measure it out. You like, what kind of tea should I get? Like, just make the decision for me. I often kind of relate it to when you go to like a fancy date night Italian restaurant and you look at that wine menu, right? And you're overwhelmed by it.
Right.
And you either, ask for help from the waiter, like, hey, what should I do? What pairs well with this? Or you just get overwhelmed and you eventually just say, give me the house red, right? I feel like people do that with tea a lot, and it's just, give me the Earl Grey or the tea bag or whatever. So I wanted to, figure out a way, how do we make it easier for people to not be tied to the kitchen and the mess and whatever else, and just be able to go and have high quality tea wherever they want to go. So I kind of made it a mission, just, start thinking about that. But that was over quite a few years. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So you said there's a problem here. Like, this is too messy. It's oversteeping. And then what did you do? Like, what was that process like of actually creating the product?
Yeah. So it actually started, I brought this one. So this is a tea infuser called Imbue. This launched on Kickstarter a few years prior to when I was starting to do mine. Really cool, little magnetic thing to help it just stay at the top, but still had to unscrew, rescrew. I don't know if you've ever drank out of like a mason jar, but sometimes when it gets in those threads, it can like drip. And so I thought that it was cool. It did really, really well on Kickstarter. But then fast forward maybe 6 months, 8 months, something like that, and they were being sued because somebody in Michigan or something like that made like a piping hot tea, walked outside in like 10-degree weather, put it in the car, and it exploded.
Holy
and
cow.
And I was like, well, yeah, because it's glass, and the thermal temperature like change there just made it like explode. So I was actually on a walk with my wife, and I said, I think I can do better. And just I'd already been thinking about it a little bit, and I was in a role in a job where I was learning about supply chain and stuff like that. So we kind of talked about it, and I was just like, hey, I think I'm going to try it. And so the process then was just, like you said earlier, like, what's the problem? How are we going to solve it? There's a few that I've already identified. Like, how do we change that? Well, it's going to be materials. It's going to be the way that the customer uses it. I was really just scratching my own itch and wanting to solve it for myself too, which helped because it just like drove the passion there and wanting to do that. But I hired a mechanical engineer, just found somebody through my grad program. Somebody else introduced me, and she, her name's Chelsea. She was super helpful in just the process of like, well, you can't just draw it out on a piece of paper, right? We have to like do CAD files, and we have to go through this long process of like how the materials are going to go together and all that. And then it gets even crazier later in like the actual tooling, and it's called manufacturing for design process. But it really came down to drawing it on paper first, solving the problem, and then just taking that first step to make it a little bit more real and get somebody else involved. And then I kind of had that accountability, and I like working with people. So by the time that I was able to actually sit down with somebody and like talk about what I wanted to do and have somebody else get excited about it too, that's when it really kind of started to get fun.
Wow. So did you guys have to like test the product? Because I know you mentioned that someone else's product blew up, and there's such a big responsibility whenever you're giving things to consumers. So
Big
what was
time.
that like?
Yeah, so well, I'll show you the very first prototype.
Okay.
Right? So we actually took this off of just this is a glass jar off of like Amazon. Everything else here is 3D printed. So
Wow.
we literally were just trying to get to the point where we could make it look good, not functional whatsoever. So when we did our Kickstarter campaign, like if you ever watch back the video, you never see anybody actually flipping it over or like even drinking out of it really. And every time they did, they would just like spit something out in the video. But this was just like fake it till you make it kind of thing. Like, let's just like put the idea out there and see how people are going to respond. And they did really, the Kickstarter did really well. But then to your question, like, we took probably a year and a half to take the design for manufacturing process from just like this jar, basically, and 3D print to like molds and tooling. And there's T1 tooling and T2 tooling. And then, I mean, it is a long process. And we had some hiccups along the way that, definitely weren't anticipated. Actually, the latch, of this whole thing, the latch was the craziest thing. So it's a 2-step latch, and we wanted it to be able to just open, right? So we wanted that one-hand use. We didn't want you to have to take anything off. But when you're dealing with super hot liquid, we don't want this to break, obviously. This is not glass. It's a copolyester. It's called Triton. So, Tervis cups that usually have like the NC State logo or Duke logo or whatever. Triton makes those. It's also the same material from baby products, medical devices. So super safe, BPA free, all of that. So it holds the pressure well. But one of the things with tea leaves is when they come in contact with hot water, they oxidize. So the pressure is only building up, which is probably another reason why that one exploded too. So not only the temperature change, but the pressure inside was just pushing against the walls, basically.
Yeah.
And so we had to do a 2-step latch system to pull this down and hold it. And then when you do that, when it's really hot in there, it releases. And then you can kind of hit it and come out. So this alone probably took 8 months and 15 different like latches.
Wow.
Like we had ones that slid this way, we had buttons, it was absolutely crazy. But you have to be super careful when you're sending a product to customers and you don't want anything to go wrong. So, we had to really spend a lot of time and money to get that right, to make sure that, we'd have a good and safe product.
Yeah. And now I'm sure that you're really confident in that latch because you tried everything. Yeah. So it's like, no, I know the other one doesn't work better. I am confident that this one works the best. So.
It even has a little lock right there. So when you push it up, like you can't even open it.
Wow.
We were throwing this off of like 5-story buildings and it wasn't opening it. So we had crazy testing.
It was tested. Yeah. That's funny. So now I want to talk a little bit more about like the jobs that you had leading up to starting this company. Like how did they prepare you for entrepreneurship, would you say?
Yeah. So I moved down here out of grad school and my first job was at McKinney, advertising agency in downtown Durham. I was a strategist planner. And I think, one, that was both grad school and McKinney really prepared me to work well with teams. So you're constantly going from, I would have to meet with the biz dev or just the business team. And then my job is to kind of take the business goals and inspire the creative team so that then we can come up with a cool campaign or whatever. So being able to think strategically about how to bring the creativity out of sometimes a bland and boring problem, like, imagine trying to sell financial services to somebody or, life insurance or whatever, right? So how do you not like focus on maybe the fears or something, but how do you bring just this desire to like, oh, well, maybe I should look into that. So I think McKinney was really good from just a team perspective, the importance of brand positioning, which is what I went to grad school for, brand management. And so that was just a really good transition into, kind of the fake, just any of the projects that we were doing based out of different brands coming to us into the real world and actually taking on those real world problems. So that was my first job, and there's a few in between. Consulting was after that. I think the main thing I learned out of consulting is that I don't want to be a consultant.
Yeah. Hey, and that's important too, to learn that.
It is. It was good. I learned a lot about business processes a lot more, and the necessity of just the operational side, how important systems are. But the life of a consultant is very much like travel. You're going to these other companies and filling in for people that are on maternity leave or on vacation or something like that. And it's very sporadic, and you're never really like focused. But there's playbooks that you can use in like a 2-week period for a short stint, because you're consulting. You're not like staying there long term to think about long term goals and stuff like that. So that was super helpful in that regard. And then my first e-commerce company was right after that. I joined in early, and actually it was with a childhood friend. Justin Winter, whom we fast forward started another company together. But at this company, it was a home fragrance brand, Diamond Candles. We experienced like really, really cool growth. Did like $1 million the first year, then 5, then 12, then 22 million.
Wow.
And like there's just a team of 7. I think at the height of it, just in like back office, like 7 of us. We had a manufacturing facility and stuff, but it was just 7 of us kind of working on growing this thing. Now this is back in the Facebook heyday, and when it was just easy almost to get eyeballs and stuff. But I learned a lot about just process there too, but also failing fast. Like that was super important there. Like we were young, and by no means did we have it all figured out. The company started by pouring our own candles in the basement and just throwing it up on Facebook one day around Valentine's Day, actually. Yeah. And so we did a lot of stuff like that, and that one was probably the wildest ride that I've had so far, just the ups and downs and the fails, but then the success that we had there as well. It was out of that company that I then went on with Justin to start Boostopia. And one of the pain points that we realized, and this will be a recurring theme, right? Like, what's the problem? How do we solve it? And I think that's important to always like try to keep things as simple as possible. Like, what is that problem that we're trying to solve, right? In this case, it was, hey, we have a lot of volume, a lot of sales, and then we have a lot of people reaching out to us. I'm sure you've been through this before, but sometimes you'll reach out to a company and you just have a negative experience, or you're like, I feel like I shouldn't even, have to be reaching out to you. Like, you should know this. Well, that costs a company a lot of money. Like, how do you minimize the amount of tickets or calls or whatever that come in? But more importantly, in order to do that, you have to know why they're actually reaching out, right? So we went on to Boostopia to try to solve that, help companies understand the why behind what they were reaching out about, and then how do we fix that? Because if you can fix that or minimize it, then you don't have as much overhead with employees or call center or whatever. But your customers are literally telling you something that is broken in your company or just in your processes. So fix that, and saves you money. It also, the best support is no support. So I'm going to have a much better experience with a company if I don't have to actually reach out to them and get my problem solved.
Yeah,
like if it's just already
point.
solved, and it sounds weird to say that, but the best support is no support just kind of makes sense. So that's kind of what we were trying to solve there.
Yeah. Are you still connected and like helping out with that, or?
No, so we exited Boostopia. We actually sold that to another support company who loved. So Boostopia was kind of split up into 2 sides. There was the consulting side of it and helping people just get better at their support operations, and then the platform, which was kind of the analytics behind it. The kind of consulting side of the business is still going on. I'm no longer part of that. But the analytics side is what we sold off to another company, and they're running along with that and going after the vision that we had originally set.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So now I kind of want to talk about what a typical day is like for you.
Okay. I mean, it's definitely different every day. I feel like, like I mentioned earlier, I'm husband and father first, so the mornings are usually pretty crazy with 2 little ones. Beckett's 5, Camden's 3, 2 boys, and they're just crazy and running around. And it's, we got to get breakfast, we got to get them in the car, get them to school or preschool, and all of that. But my wife is a nurse practitioner at Duke. She actually only does 24-hour shifts. So depending on when she works, I can be like daddy daycare essentially, and just like in charge of taking the kids and stuff like that. And so there'll be mornings where I like don't even get in to start work until like 10, it feels like. And but there's always the constant balance of home and work. But I mentioned I like to play golf. I'll try to get out. I think that's important, just having balance and having time away to like just reset in some instances. So I'll try to play once a week. Outside of that, typical week, we're involved in church and small group. We host a small group at our house. I play sand volleyball in a league when it's warm outside.
Oh, nice.
I like to do woodworking, and I like to work with my hands. I mean, most of the time I'm behind a computer screen, right? So if I can get outside or work with my hands or something like that, that's like freedom for me. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, we'll just we like to explore the city, go eat good food, which is easy to do around here.
Yeah, it really is.
So
cool.
Pretty normal, I guess.
Yeah. So whenever you're working on a Mosi Tea, like what are the main tasks that you're doing right now? Because I feel like that's probably changed over time.
Yeah. It definitely has changed from a side project to full-time. I'm full-time Mosi now, and the Kickstarter that we had done was really back while I was at Boostopia. So it was definitely like side project, like nights and weekends. My wife can attest to that. But yeah, now it is, full-time growth mode. We just finished a fundraising round recently, and so that was taking a lot of my time. It's necessary, and we have some awesome investors, but it's a grind, like to just be chasing that, and it takes a lot longer than anybody ever anticipates it taking. But I have a co-founder, Gavin, whom I brought on last year, been just an incredible asset to helping me grow, and just in us being able to, we both wear a lot of hats, and I think we're still young enough in the company where, we'll share some of those hats, and we're both involved in a lot, but we still are also able to figure out like, hey, this is probably more your lane, this is probably my lane. So we make a good team in that regard, but, we'll do little sprints here and there of like, okay, what do we need to focus on this week or this month or this quarter? And that can constantly change. Like I know that every day, like I have a plan, but sometimes that can get interrupted, and, or I just get distracted by TikTok or something like that. Yeah. Right? So, but right now we have some really cool stuff that we're working on. Tea is about to launch. We've got some really, really good. So I'll tell a little bit about it real quick too. So coming from Southern Africa, I knew that I wanted to go to specific gardens all around the world and get hand-picked loose leaf tea. Wow. So every single icon that you see on there in the front kind of tells a story of, so I wanted to get inspiration from the culture, from the people, from the place, from the ingredients. So there's kind of these 4 tiles that are made up of and just kind of switched around in different colors and stuff like that. But they all tell the story basically of the teas, where the tea's from, the culture, the people that picked it, and all that. So an homage, I guess, to just where it comes from, which actually Mosi, I didn't say this earlier, but Mosi is an homage to our time in Africa. Victoria Falls, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, beautiful place, one of my favorite places to visit. The locals there call it Mosi Watunya, which means the smoke that thunders. So Mosi comes from the name Mosi Watunya and just an homage to Africa. But we're excited about this, and it's been one of the big things that we've been working on recently. So we'll come out with 10 different teas from all over the world, mostly like your typical black teas and green teas have like a strong base that's like Darjeeling or Assam, all in India. Because of my ties to South Africa, we have a delicious rooibos lavender that is really, really good. But that has been fun. Like I've always been like a product guy at heart. I love building and just like creating and telling a story around something and having the brand around it too. So the tea project for sure has been a lot of fun. But outside of that, it's really just how do we grow? I kind of put it in two different areas, like demand capture, demand generation. Like we're very much in that demand capture phase where we're just trying to get it out to whomever that we can and just kind of tell the story, get it in the hands of influencers. I think the demand generation stuff will come later, but this kind of all goes back to like systems, right? And like, what do we focus on now? But yeah, there's always distractions as well.
It looks really good. Like the design looks awesome. So do you guys outsource that type of stuff, like your website and like the marketing, or how does that work?
Yeah, we do. We try to keep a lot of it in-house. Now, neither of us are, fancy designers for the most part. I can be dangerous enough with some of that. Like I've done our website.
Wow, it looked really good.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll outsource some stuff. Like if some of the design and even the design of the packaging there, we definitely have somebody that, I'll kind of give the brief exactly how I explained it earlier. Like I want to be able to talk about the culture, and these are kind of the things. Let's take icons from like their currency or a rug that was made or something like that. You can always find really cool designs just looking around, right? So I'll outsource as much as I can, but there's 3 words that I like to try to focus on whenever we're thinking about projects, and that's optimize, automate, outsource. So whatever we have going on, how do we optimize this process? Can we make it better, faster, write an SOP, standard operating procedure, where we can just hand that off? Can we then automate it? So like an easy example of that is a content calendar for social, and then putting it into a tool in one day that schedules out everything for 30. Right. Easy automation, right? If you can't do that, outsource it. So, but it all goes back to the very first one, which is optimize and making sure that you have a really good procedure in place. Because if you just ask somebody to do something or hand it off, it's not going to get done the way that you want. Then it's just more work. So, being able to get all of those procedures in place is super important. So 2-man team, we do as much as we can, but we can't do everything. Right. So we definitely rely on others. Sometimes that's just contractors, sometimes that's agencies. When we do outsource, especially to agencies, another thing that I like to, from a framework perspective, think about is whatever I can't do, how can I be a manager of experts? So find people that, I can probably learn something, but it's going to take me a lot more time to learn it than just handing it off to somebody who really knows what they're doing. Now, I have to do a good job at vetting those people, right? But at the end of the day, if you can be a manager of experts and then just control what you can control within the organization, you're gonna have a way easier time like focusing on the important things, which is the vision of the company, where you want to go, and then be able to delegate when needed.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned funding. Can you talk about like what the process is like of getting funding? Like, do you go to, so Kickstarter is obviously online, but if you are like trying to get an investor, like where do you go? How does that work?
Yeah. So Kickstarter is the easy one, right? Well, not easy, but you can go there and you have access. There are people on the platform that are ready to see a good idea and give you money. I did have to raise a little bit of money before we did our Kickstarter, so I knew, right out of grad school, and with my wife being in grad school, we weren't about to go and put, thousands of dollars into starting something. And I did a lot of research and knew I needed a certain amount of money to then go and launch on Kickstarter in order, I think, for it to be successful. Once we got to that, I talked about the long, year and a half stint where we were figuring out the engineering of the product and traveling to China and all that. That was expensive. I knew the tooling alone, this is crazy. I thought it was going to cost $120,000 to get everything done. And it ended up being $180, $200. Now, Kickstarter covered that, but we also had to do marketing and other things and hire and pay ourselves a little bit at least so we can eat. So I knew, even during the engineering phase that we were going to have to raise more money. And I literally asked myself the same question, where do I even go and who do I talk to? Now, I was at Boostopia at the time and we had been raising money there, but it was very different, right? So SaaS versus, direct-to-consumer goods. I needed to just start networking, which was the most important thing by far. Fortunately, Justin and I both had, previously been in e-commerce. And from our time there, we definitely knew other operators. And so I kind of just started one with operators. Hey, you've raised money. Who should I talk to? Introduce me to somebody. And every single time I talked to one person, I asked them to introduce me to 3 people. Hey, who are 3 people that I could talk to? Yeah. And just over an email or something, because, I knew I probably wouldn't get 3, right? Or not all 3 would want to talk. So I just made sure that I always had somebody else to talk to. A lot of our investors are here. There's some awesome companies in this area that have done well, and they have different executive teams who are just trying to help out the community. And when they're, fortunately excited about an idea, there's a lot of due diligence that then goes. It's not just one conversation or one round of golf or one beer or anything like that. You have to tell a story, but you have to be able to, show that vision and make sure that it's shared as well. So it takes a long time, but, it all comes down to people and meeting people and asking for help. And then obviously just having a good plan in place where people can get on board.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I love the idea of going to somebody and saying, hey, can you introduce me to 3 people?
Yeah.
That's perfect. Do you guys ever think you'll go on Shark Tank?
A lot of people ask that. I don't think so.
Okay.
And I love Shark Tank. It's fun to watch, and but they always ask for so much of the company and all of that, right?
Yeah.
When we went out on the fundraising trail, we decided, hey, this is this certain amount that we want to give of the company in order to get to that next phase. And so we raised. We were a little bit oversubscribed. We raised just over $400,000. If I went on Shark Tank, I'd get that same amount and give triple of the equity, right? So I don't think that I think the product would do well on it. I think that kind of like the third wave of coffee, I really think that North America in general, is starting to see the importance of tea from whether it's a health perspective or just replacing coffee, or the versatility of it and how many flavors and things that you can do. You can literally cook with tea. And one thing that my co-founder and I have been doing now, and even getting some influencers to do, is tea-inspired cocktails. So you can actually put in so this is actually a black rose tea. Instead of water, I'd fill it up with bourbon, flip it over, and steep it for about 4 hours, and then make an old-fashioned with it. And you have a black rose old-fashioned, and it is delicious. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with it, and I think that there's almost this third wave of tea, and just a lot of inspiration that comes around that, and just people having fun with it. So I'm excited to, hopefully, the product to be part of that movement, but we have the tea too. So
yeah, That's really cool. Yeah, I guess it makes sense why you guys wouldn't go on Shark Tank. It seems like they're really like coming for people. They're trying to take as much as they can. But I feel like sometimes whenever people go on there, because I watch it a lot, the people who don't get deals, I'm like, why didn't they get a deal? And then I like want to buy their product just because I saw them on Shark Tank. But
I've had a few friends on Shark Tank, and there's a gamut of like their experience, like whether it's good or bad. Some of them have gotten deals and done really well, and then others, they were shocked that they didn't get a deal. Sometimes those deals fall through even after the fact, and then other times, somebody can reach out to them again and be like, hey, I was thinking about it, I liked your pitch, and I'd like to talk. I think that all the sharks bring a lot of value. I don't know if it's as much value as I would be willing to give away. Maybe it is. Maybe that's naive to say, but I think it's perfect for a lot of people out there who are just starting out.
Yeah, cool. Sorry, I was on my little Shark Tank kick because I just love it so much. But now I'm curious how owning your own business affects your lifestyle. Like, it sounds like you have some really good hobbies outside of work. How do you balance it?
I honestly struggle with this sometimes because I have like a pretty hard rule where 6 or 7 o'clock-ish, like I turn everything off. I want to be involved. I want to be present with family. I also know that sometimes I need a break from that too, and like need to go play golf. So it is a constant balance. Like there are definitely times where I've taken a break, and I almost feel like guilty that I did that, and so I can't even really enjoy it. When you own your own business, like you're always thinking about work and what you can be doing. Like I have a notepad next to my bed where, just in case I wake up in the middle of the night with like an idea or something, I can just go and like write something down, or sometimes just put it on my phone or something. But there's good in it too. I mean, the fact that I am not part of some corporate hamster wheel and just the grind of like every day 9 to 5, like I have flexibility to work when I know that like my brain's actually working and when it's not. Like there will be days at 2 o'clock where I'm like, nope, can't do anything. And so I'll be able to just take a break. But, I mean, I think the travel aspect of it, just the nature of Mosi, I'm going to India in April to go and visit our gardens. So like the fact that, tea has just been such an important part of my life since I was a kid, walking through tea plantations in Africa to now about to walk through India is just really cool. There's actually a quote. I want to make sure that I get it right because it's powerful and has been a big inspiration to a lot that we've done with Mosi. But I think it goes something along the lines. It's an African proverb, and it goes something along the lines of Americans have watches, Africans have time. And just to unpack that, it's like, it's so true. We could be walking down the street or just be anywhere, and everyone always had time for as much time as needed for a conversation. Like there are no appointments, there are no watches. You don't have to be somewhere. America is very much like a go, time to be here, time to be there. And I think it's just been a good lesson in intentionality, right? And people in general. I love people and I love being around people. That's really how I get energized. So, whether it's a village in Africa or gardens in India or, at a kid's soccer game or anything like that, I think I'm blessed to be in the position that I am and what Mosi's brought to just be able to focus on that.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. I love that quote. So now I want to talk a little bit about, the viewers who are watching. If they have a product in mind, what would you say should be like their first step?
Solve a problem. I think there's a lot of products out there that don't solve a problem. I think those are fads. But, the same way that it started with me, there was just an itch that I needed to scratch. If there's something that you're thinking about, it's always good to do a little bit of research too. There's tons of really cool tools out there outside of even just like Google Trends. There's something called Answer the Public, which basically it's a really cool visual representation of Google search. So like you could type in tea infuser, and then it literally brings in all the keywords and questions in this like visual map and ranks them by like how often people are asking. So if you think that there's a problem, like just do a little research. If you can solve a problem, go then talk to somebody who's kind of done it before. Come talk to me. Hang out with me, paul@mositea.com. You're welcome to email. But yeah, I think just answering your own questions, scratching your own itch, and just doing a little research, and then it'll just snowball from there, and then you can kind of figure out if it's something that you want to pursue or not.
Do you think the research should mainly be online, or do you think that they should go out to the public? The reason I ask is I took an entrepreneurship class at NC State, and she made us write out the problem and a potential solution, and then she was like, go out and ask people, ask students about it. So have you seen that people actually do that?
So maybe it's just because I did something similar in grad school, but I feel like the teachers are always like, go and talk to people.
Yeah.
It is the most important thing. I think that initial research online is important just to be able to have kind of this foundation to, what your hypothesis is.
Yeah.
It is super important to word questions in a way where it's not leading, right? So you have to figure out how to do that. And then you have to be able to just, put it into the hands of somebody and just ask a question or just observe, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that there's validity in being around somebody, actually watching them experience it and seeing how they react. That's gonna definitely, you can't do that on Google, right? So I think it's part of the tool set for sure.
Yeah. And then what would you say makes a product successful? Are there some keys to success?
I definitely think, like we've said, it has to solve a problem, and I think it just has to work, whether it's a software product or it has to, or a consumer goods product. You as the consumer have hired that thing to do something.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't do that, then you're going to fire it. You don't need it, right?
Yeah.
There are all kinds of examples of, whether it's a cup that breaks and you're like, gosh, well, that didn't work. Maybe a piece of software for your business or something like that, and you're just wasting money on it because it just doesn't meet the expectations. So meet the expectations, do it in a way that makes it easy. And I think what's really important, especially in e-commerce, is just because I have this bottle, if somebody saw it, they'd be like, oh, that's cool, I wonder what that does. I need to be able to say exactly what it does and how it's going to solve your problem. So you have to be so aware of what this can do for somebody and make it easy to put on your website or in a brochure or something like that. So having it solve a problem and being acutely aware of how to help people understand what that problem is, whether you're creating the problem for them or just exacerbating that problem.
Cool. And then do you have any other resources that you would recommend? I know you mentioned that website that people could plug a question into, but is there anything else?
Yeah. I'm an avid listener of podcasts in general. I think that is a 0 to 100 way to just learn and basically get your MBA in whatever topic. There's so many podcasts out there. I love to listen to How I Built This, Guy Raz, which basically just is a synopsis of entrepreneur journeys. Really, really cool. He's a great storyteller. From a tactical perspective, reading books and, one of the books that I think, one I've been reading lately is called Atomic Habits, and just being able to build habits from the minute habit, you don't think it's going to have too much of an effect in a week or 2 weeks, but in a year or 2 years, you can see the dramatic effect that it has. And then, we've talked a lot about optimization and automating and stuff like that. One book that I often go back to and read is the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle. That's a good one to look into and something I would suggest people to dive into. But yeah, Google. Okay. Google's one of the best tools ever. And now even TikTok, Amazon, Amazon is for products what Google is for search. So if you're thinking about a product, you can get a lot of information just by searching, in different places on the internet and TikTok and all that.
Cool. Yeah, I have even like if there's just like an experience that no one that I know physically in person has went through, I sometimes will just like search it in TikTok and be like, I don't know, whatever the thing is, and then I'll see somebody like telling a story about it, and I'm like, oh, now I feel normal, or now I have this, shared experience with this random person on the internet. But it is a good resource too. So now we're at the final three, and you answered one of them with like something for them to read or watch. Did you want to suggest anything else for the viewers to read or watch?
Yeah, I think we talked about the Pareto Principle 80/20. It's a great book. How I Built This is awesome. I love to find comedy or just watch things that are funny. I think one of my favorite shows is New Girl.
Okay.
So I'll just turn that in the background sometimes. But yeah, watch some TikToks.
Yeah. Okay. And then what would you say is a topic that they should research deeper after watching this video?
I'm going to sound like a squeaky wheel, but honestly, the Pareto Principle, the 80/20 rule, it has been so important to me. So along with that, I think like consumer behavior, any kind of psychology stuff, if you're interested in that. But then just find something that you are interested in general and like dive into it. If it's woodworking, like look into more woodworking or whatever. So it goes back to the balance, right? Like it's very important to be continuously learning in both work and life.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I like that you mentioned that. Okay, and then the last final piece of advice for them, if they don't remember anything else, they're going to remember this. What would you say?
Don't be afraid to ask for help, I think.
Yeah.
I think that it's easy for us to want to control the situation, not ask for help, just figure it out on your own. But if there's anything that I've learned from each of the companies that I've been a part of, like failing fast is important, but even more so is making sure that you're doing it with somebody else. It sucks to do anything alone, right? So, yeah, I would say for sure just don't be afraid to ask for help.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing all your advice and your experiences.
Yeah, it's fun.
I'm going to have to try y'all's tea whenever it comes out. So
I'll get you some.
yeah, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. And to see more Caffeinate Your Career episodes, click the link on screen.